How many folks came here last time Brandon was here for Words Radiance? Oh wow, that's pretty good. I'd like to point out that I did not have any emails about books getting derailed, or trains going astray, or as you might have recalled when I got up last time and pointed out that I'd gotten 144 copies of my Big Fat Zombie Goldfish. That was not helpful. This time they actually mailed the right books, and although a lot of it showed up today, so still making the bookstores a little crazy. I hope a lot of you guys have read Steelheart. If not, you need to check it out. Brandon has taken the superhero or superpower genre to a whole other level. I really love Steelheart. I liked Firefight more. Although I already threatened if he kills a couple of my favorite characters, I should be testy about it. I don't think he's really that worried about it, to be honest. But he's here to talk about that and whatever else you want. Please welcome Brandon Sanderson.
Thanks, guys. So, I'm going to follow my normal format. If you haven't been to one of these before, I am going to blab at you for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes on some random topic that I've come up with, vaguely relating to my book. After that, we'll do a Q&A. And there are prizes for people to ask questions, so be thinking what you want to ask me to entertain everyone else. And then after that, at the end, we'll have about a 15-minute long reading, okay? And I like to read from things that are unpublished, so it won't be from this book. It'll be from something that you can't buy yet, which is terrible marketing, I always say, but it's fun for me to be able to read something. Before I start, will someone be willing to shuffle a deck of cards for me? All right. Just give that a good shuffle, and I'm going to take this off because I walk as I go. So, story time. I had just barely gotten published. I think actually this is maybe the second year that I was published, and I'd finally made it as a writer. I was feeling pretty good. And I went to a party at a friend's house. And this friend had a lot of mutual friends. She was kind of one of these people that knows everybody. And so people go to her parties. And she was introducing me around. She introduced me to a friend of hers. And this friend said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a writer." And her response, "Oh, so you're unemployed." Exactly. And I'll tell you, I would be lying if I didn't tell you that a part of my heart had been waiting for that day when someone said that when I actually had a book out, because I had spent 10 years working a graveyard shift at a hotel, writing books from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Just every night for year after year, trying to break into this business. And so to finally have someone, you know, because during that time I'd say, "Oh, I'm a writer, I want to be a writer," and they'd just give me these consoling looks, right? And this time I was able to say, "Well, actually, I'm doing quite well, thank you very much." It might have been Mistborn 2, which meant that was right after I hit the New York Times list. I can't even remember. But either way, I'm like, "No, there are my books on your friend's shelf." And it was a very validating moment to me. But I've since thought about that moment quite a bit, and the way that we, as a culture, treat creativity and how we look at it. Let me get this deck of cards back. I am not going to do a magic trick. I'm no good at them. I use this is something that a mathematician friend of mine told me. Said, when you shuffle a deck of cards, I don't know if you know this, but statistically, you just created something that the universe has never seen. Statistically, every time you shuffle a deck of cards, you create a unique arrangement of playing cards that the universe has never before seen. That's kind of mind-blowing to me, because sometimes we talk about this idea that there is nothing new to say. That everyone has their own number. Some people say, well, there's only ever 3 stories that can be told. Or someone else says there's 8, someone says there's 50. I don't know where they get these numbers. But they, it's like everything has already been done. And yet, right here, right now, you just created something that has never been done before. Granted, it's only a sequence of numbers, right? But it still is unique. And there is something unique about human creativity that I think that as a culture, we need to stop kind of downplaying. I know lots of people who I will ask, "Oh, are you a writer?" when they come through because they have a writing question for me. And they'll like look ashamed, right? And they'll look down, they'll be like, "Well, not like you," or, "I'm trying," or something like that, or, whatever. And I want to get beyond that, if we can, as a culture. I want to celebrate creativity. I mean, even if you're coming through the line and you're like, yeah, I write stories, but I don't want to be a professional novelist. People feel ashamed by that. I have friends who go play basketball every weekend. When someone asks them, what do you like to do? They say, oh, I like to play basketball. The next question out of someone's mouth is not, oh, so when are you going to play for the NBA? Right? We don't ask them that. And yet, when someone says, I'm a writer, the next question is, when are you going to do something useful with that, you putz? Right? When are you going to prove your worth to society? It's like we don't allow people to be hobbyist artists, particularly writers. We want it to be worth something. Reminds me of, has anyone read Picture of Dorian Gray? It's a fascinating book, but I actually like the preface even better. So if you've never read the preface by Oscar Wilde to A Picture of Dorian Gray, it's 1 page long. And it's fascinating because his whole point of this preface, written in very Oscar Wilde-ish sort of ways, is that art is essentially useless. Meaning, the great thing about art is it doesn't have to be used for anything. We can just appreciate it as art. And I think that's important. I think for some reason our society doesn't acknowledge that with writing. We don't look at somebody who is writing and say, you know what? This doesn't have to be used for anything. This brought the person who wrote it joy. The people who read it joy. That's what it's for. It is not, doesn't have a use, quote unquote. But at the same time, I'm not just talking about writing. My mother is an accountant. Love my mother. She is awesome. She always claims, you know, when people ask her about me, she's like, I don't know where he got it. He is not, you know, she's like, I am not creative at all. She's the person that when in the church group, when, you know, people get together and like, we're going to do like, you know, bunny things to put on doors. She like runs the other way, okay? You know, she is much more at home with her ledger and her figures and her numbers and things like this. And she says, I'm not a creative person. I think that that's a fallacy. I think every person's creative. I have never met a child, for instance, who was not creative. I don't think met a person who is not creative. We just look at certain things as creative endeavors and certain things as not. And I'll tell you this, when I was in college, I took a wide variety of classes. I was trying very hard to pretend to create my own kind of be a writer major. And I figured being a writer meant you wanted to take a bunch of different stuff. And they didn't want me to do that. It was BYU, Brigham Young University. They're like, you know, this is the epitome of it should be useful. That's kind of the mentality there. And I love them, but it was, you know, this is a school that's known for its business school and not for its, you know, its art school. And so they're like, no, you have to have a real major. I'm like, oh, come on. And so I just started sneaking into the classes, right? I would go find classes in the book that looked really interesting to me, and I would sneak into them. Abnormal Psych, the 400 level classes, those are awesome. Sneak into those. They don't want you to get into those, but those are so interesting. And so I was taking a wide variety of classes, and one that I actually was able to take, didn't have to sneak into, was a programming class. I wanted to figure out what this programming stuff was. And it was really interesting to me that taking the programming class, I would get done with my programming class and my homework for that. It was Pascal for you programmers. Object-oriented programming, I still remember the book. And I would go home to do my writing, because I wrote every night, and I wasn't able to. Like, what's going on? I feel exhausted, of the exhaustion of the brain. It's like I had been doing, you know, the exercise bike, and then I got up and said, well, now I'm going to go jogging. I've been using some of the same muscles for the programming that I've been using for the writing, and all through my entire coursework at college, I never found a class that was as similar to me inside as writing, similar to writing as that programming class. Which you would think, you know, engineers, writers, polar opposites, right? My college roommate was an engineer. I was taking classes where, you know, basically what we do all day is we dance through the roses, right? And then we get, what's our homework? Go dance through this type of flower and then express your feelings about it. We did a lot of stuff like that. It's like, what did you feel about this piece of poetry? Did you meditate on it for an hour? I mean, that's the sort of stuff that we did. And he would go to his classes and, you know, I'd say, oh, what'd you do today? And he'd say, well, I took a test and I got a C. And I'd be like, oh. He'd be like, no, there were 5 of us who got C's. Everyone else failed. I did great. He's like, what did you do today, Brandon? I'm like, well, I talked about Jane Austen and watched 3 movies. I mean, you know, you would think these are polar opposite sort of careers, and yet at the same time, I never felt anything like programming when I was in school. It felt so much like writing. And I think a lot of these fields that we pretend are not creative fields, or people we pretend are not creative, are using their creativity in a different way. And I think that just as a society, we should be more open about this. We should not look at the person who writes on the weekend as, you know, as wasting their life. We should not look at the programmer or the accountant as someone who is not creative. I think we are essentially creative individuals. What does this have to do with writing? Well, I've been pondering a lot lately about writing. And I have these things that I call Sanderson's laws. I did name them after myself. Writers, we're kind of an arrogant bunch. It comes from years, I suppose, of having to tell people, yes, I'm going to write something on the paper and I want you to give me money for it. And so I have these laws, Sanderson's laws. I've done 3 of them. You can look them up online. They're about writing magic systems, Sanderson's rules of magic. And I was looking at these, and they're kind of describing how I come up with my stories and my plots, not just the magic, but the whole storytelling. And I felt there was a big hole. There was a big hole, and I wasn't explaining to people, I was not giving people the big secret about how I write stories, because these things are all important. These 3 laws. And I talk about, you know, the importance of limitations in a magic system. And I talk about things like, you know, not solving problems with your magic until your reader understands what that magic can do, right? To make people really engaged and interested in the climax of your story by giving them the tools that they can put it together themselves. Things like this. This is the sort of thing that I talk about. But at the end of the day, there's a secret I haven't been telling, and I've started calling it Sanderson's 0th law. This is the law that comes before them all. I think Asimov may have done this too, so I think I'm okay coming up with the 0th law. As long as, you know, Grandpa Asimov did it, then I can do it too. And the thing that I have to be honest about is, at the end of the day, I don't write things in my books because they fulfill these laws or they achieve this kind of storytelling archetype or things. I do it because it's awesome. And Sanderson's 0th law is always err on the side of what's awesome. And I am driven as a writer by the things that I think are awesome. And this is a secret because, you know, people come up to me and they're like, your books are so logical, they make so much sense. I'm like, yes, yes they are. Yes, these are actually new branches of physics that people just don't understand yet, that I have figured out. No, I mean, they come up, part of the whole point of a lot of my books is these rule-based magic systems. But the real secret is, the truth is, when I start, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about what is going to be awesome. When people say, why did you do what you did in The Way of Kings? I'm like, well, shard blades and shard blade. Knights and magical power armor. That was just cool. Honestly, I was thinking about how cool that was one day, and then I said, well, I'm going to find a way to make that logical. And that's the way I approach things. I think that might be inherently the difference between me and a hard science fiction writer. The hard science fiction writer says, okay, let's take what we have and let's extrapolate to the future and come up with something cool. And I say, here's this cool thing I came up with. What kind of stuff can I make up that'll make it seem realistic and rational to people who are reading it so that they will buy into this whole idea of doing something awesome for a time in the storytelling? So, that is my suggestion to you. I think our lives will all be better if we allow ourselves a little more often to err on the side of what is awesome. Thank you very much for coming to my signing today. This is the release party. This is the release day. Yes. I specifically ask my publisher these days to try and send me to a different place on release day, specifically stores that I've gone to a lot in the past and have supported me in the past. And so I actually specifically asked them if they would send me to Dwayne's store on release day, because Dwayne, he is one of these people who had me in as an author to sign when nobody else wanted me. There actually is true, there are, before I came to Dwayne's store for the first time, for like my second book or whatever it was, I actually had called a bookstore months earlier and asked if I could sign, and they said no. No, thank you. And Dwayne, you know, the way I ended up here is I was talking to author friends of mine, it was Lee Modisett actually, and he said, you haven't signed with Dwayne? What's wrong with you? Let's go meet Dwayne. And I think I mentioned it to Colin first, he like pulled me over or something like this, but Oh yeah, that's what it was. It was Josh who was like, you need to meet Dwayne. And Dwayne had me in. Dwayne just loves books and he loves authors, and so today, because of that, I will number your copies as a little commemoration. I number them only on this day, on release day, and so you'll get little numbered editions and things like that. So if I forget your number, you have to look at your book, because sometimes I forget. I'm going to try and put someone in place to remind me, but just remember, and if I forget, then I'll give you a number next time, or something like that. And if you happen to not want the number I'm giving you, if you like, I really like Avogadro's number, can I have that? I'm okay giving you wacky numbers if you would rather, but otherwise I will have a list and I'll be numbering your books. I do this at the release party yesterday in my hometown, so you're kind of alternating hundreds with them, like so you're getting like numbers 201 to 2 to 300, and it's kind of weird. My assistant came up with the reasoning for it, but anyway, you'll be getting numbers. The other thing I have are these little cards. Nope, not those cards that are falling off. So that you know what these are when they hit you in the head, is these have a little code on the back, and that code will take you to a website where we have posted a longer version of the reading that I'm doing today. And you are free to share your code with anybody who wants the code. And then they're so super cool, they punch out. And you can like put the character on your cubicle or something at Microsoft, and they can go fight your stormtroopers or something, because they have a little thing at the bottom that you punch out and fold and stick in. So it's almost like having an action figure out of one of my books. It's the closest we can get to an action figure out of one of my books by spending 50 cents. So, what questions do you guys have for me? Go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about expletives and blasphemy.
Expletives and blasphemy. Yes, here we go. It's really interesting. One of the first things that I think about when I'm coming up with a fantasy world is how do they curse? And I don't know why this happens to me, but it feels like you can build out and extrapolate a lot about a culture from what they curse by. And how they curse, and it's become a thing. Like in one of my short stories I did, I used that a saying "hell take you" to someone was a compliment, because they didn't want to go to heaven because there was a god king they hated. They're like, we don't want to go where he is, so hell must be the better place. Which was a lot of fun to me in coming up with that. Or in other ones, I have them cursed by in-world, and sometimes I just use the biblical curses, the damns and hells and things like that. And it's like, why do I use those? I use those in Mistborn because I was writing about a bunch of thieves living on the streets, and when I tried to use kind of more fantasy-ish curse words, it just felt fake for them. And yet it didn't feel fake when I started using like Merciful Domi in Elantris, because the religion of that world was so important to all the different people that they would use the name of their own deity. So this is just something that I kind of dance around, and it's very interesting to me, being a religious person myself. I will sometimes I don't use the curses that my characters will, but I'm not my characters and things like this. And so it's something I think about perhaps way too much, is how are the people going to curse in these books? So it's a very good question. What other questions we got? Go for it. Okay, if you think you've got a spoiler question, try and talk around it. And if I can't answer it without spoiling it, then I'll just tell you to come up and ask when you come through the line, okay?
Okay, let's see. All of the people with powers fit into one category.
All the people with powers fit into one category, yes.
Was there a reason you chose to do that?
Was there a reason I chose to do that? Well, I'm not sure if I can answer here. Let me throw this to you. When we get to the people in the back, that's when you're going to get hit on the head. So I assume you're asking, the original premise for Steelheart was that everyone who has superpowers is evil.
Yes.
And that's just the original premise, so that's not a spoiler. The reason I came up with the series was I wanted to tell a story about a world where Superman was not there to save you, or whatnot, where it was, what if people started gaining these powers and did terrible things with them? When I was touring for the first book, I told people the story about how I came up with that. It was when I imagined, someone cutting me off in traffic. When they did, I imagined blowing their car up, and feeling very, very satisfied that I'm like, yeah, and then feeling really guilty, because I'm like, is that what I do with superpowers? And I'm like, oh, well, I better write a book about it. It's what authors do. Anything that makes us think or makes us have strong emotions, we're like, well, that's going in a book. And so it wasn't an intentional choice. It was the whole premise and concept for me. And then the question became, did the powers corrupt, or did only evil people get them, or what's going on? And that's one of the primary kind of questions that's going on in the first book, that they have mostly kind of drilled down to an answer by the second book. All right, question.
How do you choose ages for your characters, and how often does that change throughout the writing process?
How do I choose ages for my characters, and how often does that change the writing process? I choose my characters, it's really hard to talk about, because I can really drill down into how I come up with settings, so magics and things. And I can talk a lot about how I plot and why I plot. Character is the one that I discovery write. Writers tend to fall on somewhere on the spectrum, generally between what we call discovery writers and we call outliners, and I'm mostly an outliner. I like a nice, tight outline. I like to know where I'm going and what's going on in my world before I start writing, but I found that I have to free write my characters. I have to figure out who they are as I write. Otherwise, this outline's going to be too constrictive, and I'm going to end up with characters who feel wooden. And I think that that's the real risk of outlining too much, is writing the life out of your characters. And so the ages do change, and the personalities change. The famous one is Mistborn, which stars a 16-year-old girl named Vin. She was a boy in the first chapter I tried to write of that. And then that didn't work, so I tried a girl with a different personality, and that didn't work either. And so it was the third try, where it's like I'm having people walk in and try casting calls and seeing who works. And that's generally how I go about it. With Steelheart, the character didn't click for me. And I was really worried about that. Like, the prologue worked wonderfully, and I wrote the prologue separately. I wrote it years before I went back to the book, because I just had that prologue, it popped in my head, I wrote it out. So if you read Steelheart, the prologue's like 5,000 words, it's huge. It's like 20 pages or something like that. It may not be quite that long, but it's a big chunk. It was the first thing that I did. And then I put the book aside, and I was really worried when I started writing that I didn't have a voice for the character, because the prologue takes place 10 years before when the main character's a child. And so I started writing, and it didn't work, and I started writing again, and it didn't work. And the thing that ended up working, this is the silliest thing, but it was when I wrote a metaphor that was really bad, a simile, right? And I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Because that normally happens. That's what you do when you're writing. You write something, you're like, why did I write that? It's dumb. You delete it and things. And this time I started to delete it, and I thought, what if I ran with that? And so I started running with it, and this character grew out of the fact that he makes bad metaphors. And that's just that's a simple trope, simple thing, but it grew into an entire personality, meaning this is a person who's really earnest, trying really, really hard. They are smart, they're putting things together, but they just don't think the same way that everyone else does, and they're a little bit befuddled by things. It's like they're trying a little too hard. That actually, kind of ironically, or I guess coincidentally, not ironically, the metaphor of writing bad metaphors became what grew into the personality for David. His entire personality grew out of this idea of someone who's trying so hard, and you just love him because he's trying so hard, but sometimes he just like face plants. And this is my children do this. Like, I remember my child when he was 5 years old, he was running toward me, so excited, telling me about something, and this thing that he had in his hand, and there was a pole in front of him, but the thing was so important. And he smacked right into it and fell right back over. Just stunned. It's like, who put this pole in front of me? And it's like it was at our house. It's not like he didn't know there was a pole there, right? But he was just so excited by this thing, Dad, this thing. And that was where David came from. All right, let's do kind of the middle rows right here.
During the Steelheart tour, you mentioned you were trying to work with Tor to get free ebook copies for every hardcover.
Yes, something is coming of that. I'll tell you about it. Okay. Whoosh. See, I worry that they're going to hit people. Watch out. So, I think the first chance we're going to have to do this is for my next tour book, which is going to be Shadows of Self, the Mistborn novel. And if you watch, we're coming up with something. It's still, I think, in about 5 years, maybe sooner than that, this will happen with every book you buy. But I'm going to try and jump the gun because I'm tired of waiting, and I'm going to be impatient. So when I come to U-Books for that book, there should be an option to get the book with the e-book. I can't promise 100%, but I have a half go-ahead from Tor on coming up with something to do with this. And so I can't give you details because we're being recorded. I could trust you and all of you and all of the people you have on Twitter that you're tweeting to, but I'm not sure if I can trust him. But no, it should be coming. And so watch, if I can get this together, we probably should be able to announce what we're doing and how we're doing it before too long. It's something that's very important to me. I want to be able to do bundling like this. What I would really like to do is be able to sell you a copy that has, for a slightly higher price, but not super high, the ebook, the audiobook, and the hardcover. So that's what I'm trying to make work. All right, we're going to go way back here because your hand went up, and then I'll do some more in the middle. So go ahead.
Would you rather be a misting or a mistborn?
Would I rather be a misting or a mistborn? Would I rather have one power or all the powers? I'm going to pick all the powers. What's that?
What if you have to be a misting?
What if I had to be a misting? Coin shot, so I could jump around and fly. I should pick, the thug, so I could be like tough and like people can punch me and I'd be like haha or whatever. But really, I just want to be jumping around, flying off of cars and things. All right, you people in the Gallagher splash zone, yeah, watch out. If you were here last time, I did accidentally bean somebody. I felt so bad, but not bad enough to not do it again. Oh, okay, you just keep that one. I'm going to throw another one over there. All right, all right, all right. Yeah, standing up's better. Oh, okay, will you hand that to her? My pleasure. All right, yes, sir.
Is there a word that you made up that's a favorite word of yours?
I still occasionally find myself curse-wise saying merciful domi, which is from my first one. Otherwise, there are lots of interesting words. Lately, I put the word catacendra into the Alloy of Law era to mean the end of the ash. And I like how that flows with kind of almost a pseudo-Latin on it, and things like that. And so catacendra, that's my favorite lately, but I've been working on those books a lot. All right. Ah, see, that one actually flew. There we go. All right, right here.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I am almost finished with a book called Uprooted by Naomi Novik. It is not out yet. It comes out in June, and it is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the best fantasy books I've read in quite a while. It's like this dark fairy tale, like mixed with it's like someone, you think it starts off as like a teen girl YA, and then it goes dark fairy tale really fast, to the point that you realize that if the teen girl YA people were in this book, they'd be eaten. And that's really cool. Plus it has a very compelling character, it has some fun magic, it's just, it's all around a great package. So, you guys should totally buy Naomi's book when it comes out in June. Oh, I beamed you! Oh, that means you get to keep it. That means you get to keep it. Alright, I'm trying not to throw them too hard. Did that hurt? No. Okay, good. Alright, see, I'm not, will you pass that back to her? Thank you very much. Alright, right here. Has anyone ever told you that you look like Bob Silverberg? Because you totally look like Robert Silverberg. Yeah. So, that's a compliment. Robert Silverberg is one of the most distinguished people in science fiction and fantasy. He's also a major troll, so, but in a nice way.
Was there an almantic power that didn't make it into the book?
Was there an almantic power that didn't make it into the book? Oh yes, but I'm trying to remember. I had like 24 of them. Oh boy, I can't even remember the ones that I discarded. I was going to do a lot more stuff kind of externally, like stuff that wasn't inside of you, and it just didn't end up working out. The big thing that I talk about with allomancy that changed is originally I was using silver as one of the metals, because okay, dumb story time. Ooh, great. Dumb story time. So, when I was a kid, I painted these little miniatures that you do in D&D, so your little guys can actually fight each other, right? And my brother still does this, they're awesome. I was terrible at it, but I painted these little guys. And at one point I went, and they used to be lead, and then they realized that lead kills you. And so, or maybe it just makes you strange, I can't remember. So I went, and all the prices had gone up, like by a double, because they'd made them out of pewter instead. And I was to the guy, I'm like, what is up with this? You are totally, you're ripping us off. My figures now cost 50 cents instead of a quarter. I don't know what it was. But he's like, oh yeah, it's because pewter has silver in it, man. You're buying little silver figures now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so I bought them. And so for years I thought pewter was an alloy of silver. And so I wrote an entire book, the whole first Mistborn book with silver eyes and pewter arms. Until it went to my beta readers like, there's almost no silver in pewter, Brandon. You don't even really need it. Everything in this magic system works except for that. I'm like, well, we can just pretend in this world that pewter means like, no, that's stupid. And so I had to change it to tin, which is actually what you find in pewter. And so to this day, my assistant Peter, who's my continuity editor, came to me and said, you realize you wrote Silver Eye instead of Tin Eye in the newest Mistborn book that you just finished. It's been 10 years, Brandon, get over it. Still happens. All right, other questions? We're right here with the manly beard.
That's right. Do you have any advice for a married couple who both hope to be professional novelists?
If you hope to be a professional novelist and a married couple, you're very lucky because you'll be able to understand each other. You're also, you poor souls, because you're going to ignore each other a lot. I would say the number one piece of advice I give to writers is this. Treat becoming a writer, doing your writing, like someone would treat being a pianist. Meaning, your job is not to write a great book. Your job is to train yourself to be a person who can write great books. And that is a very big distinction. You don't find pianists who, only play one song. Maybe you do, they're at parties and they're trying to pick up girls. But otherwise, a pianist is somebody who enjoys the process of playing these different songs and learning this music. Same with writing. The job is you are the end result, not the book. A person who can write great books. And you do that by practicing a lot. At your own scale, whatever you can manage, but you do it by practicing, you do it by thinking in your head. This is all practice. Even the books that might get published is practice. It's about the process of creating something. Otherwise, I would say listen to my podcast, Writing Excuses. We started a brand new thing on Writing Excuses. If you've never listened before, we this year are doing a master class, is how we call it, where every month we're going to drill down into a topic and kind of guide you through writing a story, pre-writing the first month, and then plotting the second month, and things like this. And so, writingexcuses.com. The other resource I have is my class. Now I teach that in Provo, so you probably can't get to it, but I do post the lectures online, and the ones from last year just went up. So if you want those, I've got little cards that show you the URL. They're just free, my writing lectures, okay? But as a couple, set goals with each other. This is your big advantage. And, don't set goals of, I wrote more than you. Set goals like, of this is what I want to accomplish, this is my writing time, this is your writing time, and help each other out, okay? Plus, you've got a great start to a writing group. Oh, sorry, I hit you. All right, let's do, right there, hand wet, yes. Yep.
Okay. Which of the worlds, is your favorite? If you could find yourself living in that world.
That's two different things. Which is my favorite? Roshar is my favorite. I've been working on that one the longest. I think it's the most unique. I put a lot into it, but I don't know that I want to live there because on Escadrille, where the Mistborn books take place, they have flush toilets. Right? They have some of them in Roshar too, but Escadrilles, they've got cars. I like modern conveniences. I like, mac and cheese. I like the internet. And so the answer you would be, if someone were going to say you have to live in one of the worlds you're going to make, I would go hurriedly write one that's far future and awesome, where nothing exciting ever happens. Because that would be the best place for a writer to live. All right, I'm going to try and throw this, but you guys beware. All right. Oh, wow, that almost went to you. I'm so proud of myself. Okay, go ahead, right here.
I heard a rumor that universes of all your books are instantly connected.
Yes, most of my books, not all of them. If a book mentions Earth, it is not connected to what I call the Cosmere. I kind of made this decision early on. So those who don't know, my epic fantasies are indeed all connected. There are characters who cross over between them. I've been planning this for 20 years, so I've got this really this intricate thing going on, and there will eventually be big crossover books. But for right now, I don't want people to feel like they have to read everything in order to understand what's going on. And so right now, each of the books are only cameos. But you will be able to notice characters crossing between, and there will be big crossover books eventually. As an aside. Woo! Oh, that almost got to you. I'm getting better. As an aside, It's really funny. Like, I've had on and off sort of things go well with Hollywood and things not go well with Hollywood and things get optioned. Someone in Hollywood read one of my books and then went online and Googled about it and found out about this whole thing and then called me and wanted to buy the rights to the entire thing because they're like, it's like the Avengers, everything's crossing over. Apparently that's hot in Hollywood right now, which is very cool that someone in Hollywood was excited by it, but it was kind of funny to me that it's like, you know, now that's the big deal, and so this goofy thing I've been doing for 20 years is suddenly hot. So who knows, it might turn into something, it might not, but for those who are curious about movie things, I have optioned most of the rights to a lot of my different books. I think what's the closest? I'm not sure what the closest is. The closest is probably The Emperor's Soul, though Mistborn is close behind it. I don't think either one is particularly close right now. That's just how Hollywood works. So don't hold your breath, but I hope to have exciting things I can say eventually, because I really do like the people, both Emperor's Soul and Mistborn. They're some of the best people in Hollywood I've ever worked with, those two groups. They feel very genuine, and I have a great feeling about it. So, all right, right here.
How do you come up with languages? Is it just because it sounds cool, or?
Languages. So languages in my books. I have a couple of tools I use, and it depends on the book. For some books, I just use kind of shortcuts. Mistborn's an example of this. There's only one language everyone's speaking, and then there's a little bit of Terrace. And so for that, I just made every region I based off of an Earth language. And use that, like for instance, the central dominance is French, and so Vin and Demo, and they would say Kelsier, and things like this are where the names came from. For something more intricate like Stormlight Archive, I did take linguistics classes. I only snuck into a few of those, and so I'm able to actually kind of drill down and do some real linguistics. And so I know what I want things to sound like, and I know how I want them to feel. And, you know, I've got all sorts of goofy things that you wouldn't even need to know. Like, for instance, they would say Cholin instead of Colin, and stuff like this, because it's a little bit Semitic. The language family that I'm using is kind of a basis. But then there's also weird stuff like, you know, the symmetrical names and stuff like that. And so, anyway, I can talk about that forever. But the answer is yes. I find what's cool, but sometimes it's really academically cool, and sometimes it really puts people off. Like one of the very first reviews I got for Elantris is like, these names are really hard to pronounce and kind of dumb. And this was like one of the major review magazines. Like, I can't get into these names because I'd used lots of linguistic things from my time living in Korea to create the languages, and they were kind of hard to say. That's part of why in Mistborn everyone has a nickname that's easy to remember. All right, whoosh. Oh wow, that one was awful. All right, it's getting passed back. All right, glasses dude.
So, how do you like to do internal monologues or like thinking between different characters who are very distinct from each other?
How do I like to do internal monologues and thinking between different characters that are distinct from each other? I just try to make it be in their voice. I'm a person that likes to put thoughts directly in someone's head, so you'll see them in italics, and I try to keep to their voice as much as possible. So if they have linguistic quirks, I put them into the thoughts. All right, let's do some people in the way back. So that guy in the jacket whose hand went up super fast. Yes, I did. They are trying to make a movie of it. I don't know when it will get made or if it will get made, but I was reading the treatment for the second book on the film today, on the plane today, and it was actually really good. So, what's that? Something went wrong? I can't hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. What's that? Why don't you ask me when you come up through the line to get your book signed, and I'll answer it then. But let's pass. Can someone run that back? Art, not Dwayne. Dwayne's too important. All right, let's do standing up at the back.
I don't know what you can or cannot tell me, but I read that you made a comment that Hoyt is your favorite character. I don't know what you can say about that.
Hoyt is definitely a favorite of mine. Picking a favorite character is like trying to pick a favorite child. It's not productive. Robert Jordan always answered this question by saying, my favorite is the one that I'm writing right now. But yes, Hoyt is the character, one of the very first characters I came up with, and he travels between almost all of my books. So you can watch for him. All right. I'm gonna try and throw this, but if it doesn't go, then Art's gonna have to run another one. Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Here, Art, go run that back. All right. Let's do in the corner here.
Where does Sixth of Dusk sit in the timeline?
Where does Sixth of the Dust sit in the timeline? It is probably the furthest future of any of the Cosmere stories I've done.
So around like the third trilogy of Mistborn?
Potentially, probably not quite to that, but yeah, that it is very. Whoa! Let's pass that back. It is. The ones with Zeth on them flew way better. I think it's because he's a windrunner. So yeah, but that's the latest. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier about emotions and how they inspire you, but do you realize how many tears you
Sorry, but I'm not really. These are not flying. I'm gonna have to put more weight behind them. Then I feel I'm gonna hit people. All right over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we gonna see anything in the Elantris universe anytime soon?
You should see, anytime soon is very difficult to answer. Like, the next thing I'm doing in the Mistborn books, I actually wrote 2 of those instead of 1, because 2 for the price of 1, right? Did you guys know this? I sent them to my publisher because the book was due, and I sent the book off, and I attached a sequel to it in the email and said nothing about it. I just said, here's your book. And then went to bed, because this I was setting this at like 4 a.m. because I stay up really late. And so I got up the next morning to mass panic from my publisher and agent. They're like, you put 2 books in here! I'm like, yeah, I wrote 2 on accident. And so I did that to them. So yeah, so then they, threw a party because an extra Sanderson book, unsurprisingly, is a pretty big deal at the publisher. And then they decided to publish them very quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm writing Calamity, 3rd of the Reckoners, and final of the Reckoners right now. So our next sequence of books will be 2 Mistborn books, then Calamity, and then the 3rd Stormlight book. So, all right, in the pink.
What are some of your favorite books to read to your kids?
Favorite books to read to the kids? Hands down, my favorite book to read to the kids is Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. Just, that story is so much fun, like when they get it. Right? Because I read it to like the 2 or the 3-year-old and they don't quite get it. By 4, they're like, I get to say no to the pigeon. And they love it. They absolutely love it. Lately, we've been reading one they just love called Super Tato. We bought it when we were in the UK. So they use all like these trolleys instead of, and it's just about a potato that saves vegetables in the supermarket. And it came with stickers to stick on your own potatoes to turn them into super potatoes. And so anyway, I have 3 little boys, and they just absolutely love Super Potato. If you want to see a picture of my little boys, I did a blog thing, which was really just a big advertisement for my books, but don't tell anyone, talking about the superhero genre and, my children who dress up as superheroes. And it's so funny. They are endless sources of inspiration. They go into the room and they come out with things and they're like, I am Batman. I'm like, you've got a bucket? And you've got an iPad that you affix to your arm somehow, and you've got an oven mitt, and you're Batman. Yeah, I'm Batman. You look just like him. All right, way in the back over there. If I were going to have an epic be good and Steelheart, which one would it be? That is a big old RAFO, which stands for Read and Find Out. And because I will talk about that through the course of the book. So you need to read Firefight, okay? Come up and get your card, or come around. Let's give you your card. All right, I've got time for like 2 more before we do the reading. So let's go ahead to the young lady back there. Yes, you. Just point it to yourself.
I was curious if you had an inspiration for the scene with Ben and Ellen's going to his father's camp and like the talk about acceptance.
Yeah, a lot of these stories. If you didn't hear it, there's a scene where Vin and Ellen in Words of Radiance go to visit, not Words of Radiance, Well of Ascension. They both start with a W. I'm running out of letters to start books with. Yeah, it's a good problem. So they go and they talk to Straff, and there's a lot of discussion about acceptance and just kind of the things I was thinking about at the time and that I think about a lot. One of the things is, and I hope people enjoy this, if not, you're just gonna have to deal with it. I work out kind of what I'm thinking about life through the voices of my characters. And it's something that I really look for in books as well. I do want a little philosophy with my fantasy. And, you know, it's not that I'm trying to answer those questions, but I'm working on them. And the characters, because they have a different perspective from myself, because characters don't voice what I think, they voice what they think about something I'm thinking about. And that really kind of helps me think about it and talk through it. And it's one of the reasons why I write books, besides doing awesome stuff. All right, guy in the blue, you're our last one, so it's got to be awesome.
Are we going to see book 5 of Alcatraz?
Are you going to see book 5 of Alcatraz? That counts as awesome. So I have written book 5 of Alcatraz. And, oh yes, he's going to run it so you don't get hit. I have written it. Tor is re-releasing them because we bought them back from Scholastic. And are then, oh yes, I didn't give you one either, did I? Okay, I'm behind. Okay, there's another one. Okay, so I bought the rights back. I didn't think they were treating the books very well. And we sold them again to Tor, and Tor just got the cover art for the first 4, and it looks really cool. It's the best cover art I've had on an Alcatraz book, which is good, because Alcatraz in the books makes fun of the cover art of the, that is on the books, and it's so bad. I don't think our publisher liked that. So I'm going to have to change that line or something. But anyway, the plan is to re-release those starting January of next year and release them every 1 to 2 months until we get to the 5th book in the summer and release it then. So it's still a little ways off. I've been saying that for a long time, but there's at least cover art now, and the book is actually written. All right, I'm going to do a few announcements first, and then I'm going to go into the reading, okay? So, the number 1 announcement is, I've told you how much I love this bookstore. One of the reasons why I like this bookstore is Dwayne, goes to extreme lengths to get the weird little things that I do that no one else has. He has mitosis. You can see over there, they're these cute little hardcovers out of the UK. That is the only print edition of the novelette I did as a bridge story between Steelheart and Firefight. It's a very fun story. It's the only place in the United States that has copies, so you may want to look into that. Do know that half of that book is a preview of Firefight, which you already have. So do be aware. I mean, it is a short story, but they're very cute little hardcovers. I absolutely love them. And this is the only place you can get them. He also ordered in the RPG book. So if you like role-playing games, it's a pen and paper RPG that I helped design, done by Crafty Games. They have it in both of its supplements. The one about Alloy of Law has a new, the first one and the third one have new short stories by me in the Mistborn world. The first one, I'll be honest with you, it's basically just walking people through how allomancy works. So it's not something that's going to be super awesome to you. The one in the third book is awesome. If you've read Alloy of Law, it's Allomancer Jack. His story expanded and annotated by his trusty sidekick, Terraceman, who is sarcastic and making fun of him as the book. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. So the RPG book, if you role play, if you have friends that role play, Dwayne, I was gonna say made me, but gently encouraged me to bring hardcovers of Emperor's Soul, because the only place to get those is from me. So we put them in my suitcase and flew with them here so we could have the Emperor's Soul in hardcover for sale. If you haven't read this is what won a Hugo Award last year for Best Novella. It is the most acclaimed piece of fiction I've ever written. He has the hardcovers. He had a few paperbacks, but I think those sold out. There may still be around. So he has that. He does have some Alcatraz. Again, one of the only places you can find Alcatraz. Do you have some of those? Or are they all gone? They might be gone, but if you can find them, he ships in the UK edition, which is the only edition in print right now, which is all of the books, all the first 4, collected into an omnibus. So Dwayne does awesome stuff. Oh, you even have some paperbacks. Wow. Oh, wait. Where did you get those? The paperbacks of Alcatraz. Those have been out of print for 2 years. Yeah, he dug them out somewhere else. So there's the big edition. So I mean, Dwayne has the new Legion book. If you have any of those left. But Legion is my detective novel series. Don't worry, it has a goofy magic system in a detective novel. I promise you, it's our world. It's very weird, but very normal at the same time. It's about a person who's schizophrenic, whose hallucinations help him solve crimes. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And so Dwayne has all of this stuff that you can't get you can't get anywhere else. None of my other signings will have this stuff. So I'd encourage you to look through those. I appreciate you supporting your local bookstores. You know, there are lots of places that sell books online and things like that. But we have Dwayne. Because of Dwayne, I can come talk to you. So let's give an applause for the bookstore again. My other announcement is, this could take a little bit of time. I think that looks like there's like 150 of you, so it shouldn't be too bad. 150 of you, because we're doing the signing tomorrow as well, I think that's going to make both of them a little bit easier. So you won't be here until 1 a.m. like they were last night. But it's still going to take a few hours, so you feel free to go wander the store, but don't leave because they'll lock you out. But feel free to go wander around if you're in the things. I will stay until everyone's books are signed. You don't have to worry about that. All right, I'm going to do the reading now. And this reading, like I said, I'm going late. I'm sorry. I usually try to end this whole thing after an hour, but this one is going to go about 15 minutes, if my thing will work. And this is a novella I've been working on. As I mentioned to you, one of my goals with my novellas is to practice different styles and different ideas, which then I think makes my epic fantasies better because I've tried new things. I feel that an epic fantasy, like Words of Radiance and things, works better when I've practiced a whole bunch of different types of plot storytelling, and then when you read the book, you get a lot of different types of story. Different plot lines follow different types of story archetypes, if that makes any sense. So you get variety within a book. I find that when I read, I get fatigued sometimes by epic fantasies because it's all kind of the same tone. And so one of my goals is to become really good at a lot of different types of stories so that I can make use of them. And this is one of the things I've been doing. This one, there's kind of a twist pretty early on in this, and I'm going to get you to the twist, but I can't promise that I'm going to be able to read much beyond that. If I can find it on Dropbox. I'm sure that I can, but it closed on me, so. This is called Perfect State. And forgive me, I've only read this once out loud, so I'm going to stumble a little bit.
Is this Cosmere?
This is not Cosmere. On the 300th anniversary of my birth, I finally managed to conquer the world. The entire world. It had made for a rather memorable birthday present, even if that world had been created entirely for me in the first place. My achievement might have raised problems for me. After all, what did a man possibly do with his time after conquering the world? Fortunately for me, however, I had a nemesis. "He's planning something, Shale," I said, stirring the sugar into my tea. "Who?" Shale was the only man I knew who could lounge while wearing full plate armor. He hardly ever took the stuff off. It was part of his concept. I was pretty sure he had magic to make it more comfortable. "Who do you think?" I said, sipping the tea and leafing through the letters on my desk, each sealed by a daub of dark red wax. The two of us sat on a large stone platform, shaped like a patio. I'd lanced us a barrier over the top because a rainstorm thrummed outside. The rain beating against the barrier like pebbles on a drum, and because of the dark sky, we couldn't see much of the landscape passing far beneath the flying platform. A small retinue of soldiers, only about 6,000, accompanied us. The occasional crashes of light from the storm illuminated their platforms in formation around my own. My own platform carried 40 members of the elite Straying Knights, but only Shale and I were up top at the moment. Thunder shook us. Shale yawned. "You really need to figure out the weather, Kay." "I'm trying. I've been focusing on my magic almost exclusively during the 50 years since unifying the world. 350 years old and I still couldn't control the weather. It was frustrating. Well, someday. My tea was cold and I thought I could do something about. I undid the buttons on my right sleeve, exposing my skin to the blue-violet light pulsing from the sky. The grand aurora was visible even in the storm. It circled the entire world. The storm churned its mother-of-pearl shimmering, but did not break it up. I entered Lance sight, and everything around me dimmed. Everything but the grand aurora. I basked in its warm light, which one could only feel after entering Lance sight. The waves struck my skin with a pulsing rhythm. I drew the power in my arm and sent the energy up through my fingers and into the cup. The tea began to steam. I sipped it and left Lance sight as I cracked open one of the letters. The seal was imprinted with the symbol of my spy networks. Your Majesty, the note read, I believe it necessary to inform you that the Woad Scroll has once again... I crumpled the paper, sleeve still undone to the elbow. Uh-oh, Shale said. It's nothing, I replied, dropping the piece of paper. Yeah, I'm sure. The platform shook in another blast of thunder. You can't make this thing go any faster, can you? Be glad we don't have to do this the old way. The old way? Like, on a horse? He scratched his chin. I missed that. Really? The sore backsides, riding through the rain, getting bit, dealing with the droppings, finding food for the beasts? Horses have personality, Shale said. This platform doesn't. You're just saying that because it's part of your concept, I said. The dashing knight, riding on horseback, winning the hands of fair maidens. Sure, I have quite the collection of hands. A couple of arms, the occasional foot. I smiled. Shale was now happily married with 5 children. The only maidens he spent any time with were the ones who called him daddy and begged him for sweets. There hadn't really been much evil for him to fight in recent years. Only Melhi, my nemesis, the liveborn with whom my state shared a border. Even sparring with him was beginning to feel somewhat stale. I continued looking through the spy reports, ignoring the note on the floor. Besk was too clever for his own good. I needed to fire that man and hire a stupid chancellor. Either that, or hack Besk and rewrite his concept. Rewriting concepts was a pain, though, and truth be told, I was terrible at hacking. That was why I'd never got around to changing Besk. It wasn't, of course, because I was fond of him. The man was like a troll, and he never did what I told him. I ruled literally billions of people, and this one couldn't be bothered to do what I said. Here, I said, holding up a report. Look at this. Shale sauntered over, armor clinking. He took a seat at the chair beside the desk, looking over the note. Another robot. He yawned. Melhi's robots are dangerous. Yawn. You just yawned. You don't need to say it. Yawn. Whatever happened to the big quests, Kay? Hunting dragons, searching out magical swords. All you do these days is study magic and duel with that liveborn. I'm getting older, Shale, I said, looking over the report again. My spies had overheard some of Melhi's men in the border states bragging about this new robot of his. I shook my head. Melhi was still smarting after what I'd done to him at Liqueurs. He'd been so certain his armies could just roll through my lands. Getting older? Shale demanded. What does getting older have to do with it? You're immortal. Your body is young. I couldn't explain it to him. Those quests, building a kingdom, saving the world, searching out hidden treasures and secrets, those had been what I'd needed as a youth. They'd made me into the person I was, the person who could rule an empire. But that empire pretty much ruled itself these days. We had imperial senates, diplomats, ministers. I was very careful not to step in unless something grossly stupid needed straightening. My will enforced peace and equality. 5 decades of it. 5 decades during which we'd obliterated world hunger, stopped men from killing one another, and created a true lasting peace. Going on a quest? Well, it just couldn't compare to something like that. Shale was a relic from older times. These days, I needed solitude more than I needed a stalwart friend and bodyguard. The churning rain outside suddenly vanished. We had reached Aliorna. I stood up from my desk, walking to the edge of the platform. The means of creating them had been a nice discovery in the horde of the dragon Galbermeth during the first decade of my reign. And I watched the near-endless streets of the city blur beneath us. At least here, at the center of my power, I could stop the storms. Eventually, I thought to myself, I'd be able to do it without an aurora stone affixed to the center of the city. The city was a place of bulbous golden domes atop finger towers. The platform slowed in its pre-programmed course, swinging down over the city with the 100 platforms of my soldiers guarding around it. People waited to watch us pass. My movements were matters of national record, and so cheers soared beneath us as if a stream to carry us along, people waving banners of red and gold. I smiled. Perhaps I should get out more. At my side, Shale rested his hand on his sword, watching with narrowed eyes at those below. Nobody's going to be able to hit me from all the way down there, I said, amused. Well, you never know, Kay. I didn't remind him that the lance shield was still up. The platform swung down toward the palace, which sat at the hill at the center of town. It docked at the side of my large tower, then locked into place, becoming a balcony. The lower level, which held the soldiers, would open up into the guard post in the middle of the tower. I strolled off the balcony and into the room as a group of servants in vests, loose pants, and bare chests trotted out onto the balcony and lifted my desk to carry it after us. Shale stretched, clinking. That trip seems to get longer every time. It would probably be more comfortable without the armor, I said. Well, I'm your bodyguard, Kay, Shale said. One of us has to be ready. Ready, I thought. I could wipe out an army with a wave of my hand. Remember when those sky nomads tried to pinch you? Shale smiled fondly, in the way a man might as if remembering a youthful romance. Sure do. I'd say, oh, or that time when we got trapped in the tendrils of Shashim? Sure do. You carried me how far? Good 50 miles, Shale said. Lords, that was, what, 30 years ago, wasn't it? I said nothing. Well, I'm sure trouble will come up again, he said. I'm certain. Thanks for your help. Yeah, it's a good thing I'm around, eh? Anyway, I'm gonna go check with Sindra, see what the kids are up to. Good idea, I said, watching the servants set down my desk. Did I have time to file those reports? No. I needed to get moving. I joined Shale, moving toward the doors out of my chambers, and he gave me a questioning look. If I'm quick, I said, I might be able to get down into the lab before Besk can... Shale opened the door. Besk stood outside. Ouch, Shale said, patting me on the shoulder. Sorry, Kay. Besk raised a single painted-on eyebrow. He was like one of those statues that people carved on the outsides of buildings. Limbs that seemed too long, robes too stiff, face expressionless. Your Imperial Majesty, he bowed. Besk, I'm afraid the daily briefing will have to wait. I had some very important mental breakthroughs regarding Lansing that I absolutely must record in my lab before they flee my mind. Besk regarded me with a long, unblinking moment. He carried a distinctive piece of slate in his fingers, as large as a book, yet incredibly thin. There was nothing else like it in the kingdom. To the side, one of the servants helpfully carried in the crumpled paper which I'd left on the balcony, then set it on the desk, just in case it was important. Besk's eyebrow raised another notch. I will walk with you to the lab, then, Your Majesty. Shale gave me a farewell pat on the shoulder, then clanked away. He'd faced assassins, terrors, and rebels without flinching, but Besk made him nervous. You may wish to consider giving Sir Shale a leave of retirement, Your Majesty, Besk said as we began to walk. He likes what he does, and I like having him around. Your will is, of course, law. Yeah, unless the woad is involved. In over a century of rule, this is the only time the woad is called upon you, Your Majesty. He held up the piece of slate he carried, the woad scroll, the only official means of communicating with the outside. The scroll was filled with words, none of which I wanted to read. From the little I saw, however, it seemed that they were growing more forceful. I had been ignoring them for too long. We reached the steps down and walked silently for a short time, then left the stairwell and walked out to a wall walk between towers. Below, a cheer went up, and I raised a hand absently toward my subjects. Was that a band playing? The grand aurora shimmered in the sky, though for once its light failed to comfort me. Is it such an onerous task, Your Majesty? Besk asked. It is only one day, a day most would consider very pleasurable. It's not the task itself, it's the nature of being summoned like this. What is it to be emperor if someone else can just call me on a lark, as if I were a common cupbearer or a messenger boy? It undermines everything I've done, everything I've accomplished. They merely ask you to do your duty to your species. What duty has my species ever done to me? My lord, Bess said, stopping on the wall walk, this is most unseemly of you. I'm reminded of the child you were, not the king you have become. I tried to walk onward without him, but my shoes felt as if they were filled with lead. I stopped a few steps ahead of him, not looking back. It is your duty, Besk repeated. I'm a brain in a jar, Besk, I said. One of millions. Why can't they bother one of the others? It has been determined that you have accomplished We've all accomplished great things, I said, spinning. That's the point. How many of those millions of others are living lives just like mine, in primary fantastical states just like this one? The programming allows, even requires, that each state be individually tailored. It doesn't matter, Besk, I said, throwing up my hands. Lords, I hated thinking about this. I could ignore it most of the time. I'd known since childhood, of course. Age of awareness laws required it. The woad had only interfered with my life twice. First to inform me that my reality was a layered simulation, and now to demand that I procreate. And that is the end. So yeah, the concept was, what if to solve overpopulation, we just put people's brains in jars and gave them an awesome fantasy world where they could be king, and let millions of people do it. But then things are kind of going wrong for our hero. So that, I'm not sure when I'll release that, but I'm still working on it, perhaps later this year, we'll see. Either way, thank you guys for coming. Make sure that I number your copy of Firefight. Otherwise, I really appreciate you, and have a wonderful night.